Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hammer Territory podcast. This is episode 317. I'm your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Sunday evening here in early January, our first show of 2026 on this podcast feed. And I'm joined today, as I usually am, by Scott Coleman. Scott, it's been pretty quiet. We made it through the holidays. It's a new year. How are you?
Hello, Brad. Happy New Year to you and everybody out there. And hey, 2025 was not the Braves' year. Is that fair to say, to put it as lightly as humanly possible? But thank God, a new calendar year. Let's hope better days on the horizon for the Braves. And it has been painfully slow across Major League Baseball the last couple of weeks. All of those executives deserve time off with their families and friends and to unplug a little bit. But as we're going to talk about it all on the show tonight, there are a ton of free agents out there. It seems like the trade market might be getting ready to heat up as well. So hopefully over the next month or so, as spring training gets closer and closer, we have a lot of action for the Braves and across the rest of the league.
For sure. We are in that zone now where it starts to pick up again, at least usually. There's sometimes a move over the holiday. Like this year, there was the Tatsuya Imai flurry of activity because there was a deadline there. That's what spurred that. We did a show where Sean Steven talked about him, and I think there was some real smoke about the Braves. And then, by the way, he got this very interesting contract that we won't analyze in full, but a 3-year deal with the Astros that has an opt-out after both of the first 2 seasons. I don't know about you, Scott. My first thought was that Alex Anthopoulos would rather jump off a building than hand out that contract. So
very friendly to Imai. Good on him and good on Scott Boras for getting the deal. But when it was reported that Imai was going to the Astros, I think about 30 seconds later, an Astros beat reporter chimed in and said, it's a 3-year deal with multiple opt-outs. And I said, well, yep, that's why. There's probably a point in time for Alex Anthopoulos to break his no player opt-out rule. I don't know if Tatsuya Imai is that player, but eventually we might get to that point.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be a hard and fast rule, but what I would not want to do is pay a posting fee and then have an opt-out after year 1. And then again after year 2, like to the point where if he's decent at all, he's going to opt out. And, you know, there are worse things than that if you get one season out of the guy. But anyway, not a Astros podcast. You alluded to this, though. We are 6 weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting. We've made fun of that plenty in the past about like, that's really fun for about one day when guys report. But it is a milestone. We're getting closer to that. And this is one of your favorite topics. But essentially half of the top free agents available are still available, which is kind of funny. And you pulled the I thought about reading the numbers that you wrote down on our document here. It'd be very bad radio, so I won't do that. But I did add them up. So our friends at MLB Trade Rumors have the top 50 we talked about a lot already this winter. Basically 6 of the top 10 guys on that list are still available as of January 4th. 9 of the top 25 and 21 of the top 50. That's mind-blowing to me, but it's also not. It's kind of on brand for baseball. With that said, we're not getting any closer to being able to close the door on free agency and free agency talk and speculation, and I'm sure it might seem repetitive to you, the listener. It does to me as well, to be honest with you, but that's the life that we've chosen covering baseball and the market as it is. So, Scott, where's your head at with free agency, knowing that the Braves still potentially have some work that they could do, and that I know we have talked ad nauseum as a foursome about the pitching market in particular?
The starting pitching market is, everybody has their eyes on it. And it's probably been the slowest market across the board in Major League Baseball. And Dylan Cease signed early. But other than Cease, I think probably 4 of the top 6 arms on the market are still available, whether that be Framber Valdez, Ranger Suarez, Zach Gallen, Chris Bassett. All of those are like established, good to great starting pitchers, and the Braves presumably have money if the right deal comes along. So we'll see if that finally starts to shake out in the next couple of weeks. There's also a couple of really good hitters out there still. Kyle Tucker, Bo Bichette. I don't necessarily think those are real options for Atlanta, but someone's got to sign them. And sometimes if a team has their eyes on one of the big name hitters and they don't get them, well, then they shift their money elsewhere and go, okay, let's go get a pitcher or 2 for what we were going to maybe pay Kyle Tucker or Bo Bichette. So it's going to be fascinating over the next couple of weeks to see just where these big names land. There's also this pending lockout and a new CBA that's 12 months away for baseball. That seemingly has played a factor into players who have signed. It's been a really interesting offseason so far, and maybe the Braves are going to be able to swoop in and get a player for a little bit less than what the predictions 2 months ago suggested these players are going to get.
Yeah, once you get this late in the offseason, those predictions become usually, I would say, a little bit less accurate because there's just a lot more volatility in the market. We've seen some of the Japanese guys have gone way underneath their projections. And those are more complicated. Those are always difficult to project because we don't have the information on those guys, but they've all come in way under, Imai included, despite the odd kind of, I would say, the way that deal was built with the opt-outs. But we got a question that I actually wanted to ask you. And it's not the most real life question, but it could be a real life application. So that's where we'll kind of go with this. But the question came in from Welch, who says, if the only goal was to make the Braves better in 2026 and money didn't matter, keep that in mind. Only this season, money doesn't matter. That's important bylaws here. Which remaining free agent would you want the Braves to add? And my first thought was, everyone's going to assume, based on what we have always said about needing more pitching, that you pick the best pitcher and add that pitcher. Spoiler alert, that's not my answer. Do you want me to go first? Do you want to go first?
Yeah, go first, because you have an interesting answer. Your answer is not what I immediately thought of. So yes, please take the floor.
So I will give a little bit of a hat to Grant McCauley, friend of the pod, also at Capitol Avenue, great, I think retired Braves blogger, but very smart Braves person. And they're having this chat online that inspired this to some degree. But my answer is actually Kyle Tucker. Obviously, shouldn't be terribly controversial to add Kyle Tucker. He's going to be at a sky high price, which is why this is a priceless endeavor. But my stance is very clear. I think you said the same thing. They need starting pitching. I stand by that. I'm not avoiding that. They need more pitching. I believe that. With that said, I think Kyle Tucker is enough better than any pitcher that is available, and position players are safer. They also have generally more impact on a WAR basis, or however you want to put that. They're in the lineup every day. And looking back at this is where the conversation that Grant was having with Capitol Avenue on Twitter inspired this. Looking back at the Braves from a couple years ago. Now, 2023 was an outlier season. I'm not saying it wasn't. But the Braves had arguably the best offense of all time. Worth saying, certainly top 5 of all time. Great offense. They won 104 games. We all know the story. I actually had not forgotten, but kind of memory hold how average that pitching staff was. Like the Braves, I looked it up, had the number 11 pitching staff by Fangraphs WAR that season, which isn't bad, but it's not great. It's above average. They were 12th in starting pitching Fangraphs WAR that season, and they won 104 games. Because scoring runs, Scott, usually is a very, very good thing when constructing a baseball team. And I know that's very obvious, but I look back like 3 or 4 or 5 years. I won't give you all the data right now. It's become a long answer. But if you're a top 5, top 6 offense in baseball, it's almost always 90 wins and a playoff spot. Like, even if you have bad pitching, like you have to have very, very bad pitching to have a top 5 offense and not make the playoffs. And really, it's about getting in the dance when it comes to all that. So that's the short version of the answer. I would maybe give it a 30-minute answer later on. But the short answer is that I think that the Braves need pitching. But if you could add Kyle Tucker without penalty in this fantasy scenario, yeah, I understand. If you start doing the math, like, okay, they have kind of an extra player now. But that isn't a problem. Having too many good hitters is not a problem. Kyle Tucker is better than all of the players in the Braves outfield, sans Ronald Acuna. And so if you have to have less plate appearances for Mike Yastrzemski or Jurickson Profar, sorry, guys, Kyle Tucker's better than you. That's what it comes down to for me. So you can certainly, I will throw it to you. Maybe your answer is one of the pitchers. It's not a crazy answer to say one of the pitchers because they need that. But I think I really would go down with Kyle Tucker. If you took Kyle Tucker off the market, then it becomes interesting because it's like, would I rather have Cody Bellinger or Bo Bichette versus a pitcher? That's a lot closer to me. But I actually am pretty firmly, I would take Kyle Tucker, even with everything going on with the Braves.
I had a really good in-depth discussion with Steven about a week ago on the show about this Braves lineup. And is it good enough? as we expect it's going to be constructed moving forward. And sure, they could totally shock us and sign Tucker or Bichette or Bellinger or trade for somebody. But for my money, and I think your money too, objectively, we feel like this lineup is pretty much set, other than maybe one more addition to the bench. And it's an interesting thought exercise. Is this lineup good enough? And are they going to score enough runs consistently to support what we feel like could be a pretty good pitching staff? But we know the last 2 years on offense have been nowhere near what we were hoping for. So that's an interesting conversation. To answer the question, I immediately thought of Framber Valdez. I feel like he is the best pitcher on the market. Now, if you're only talking 1 year, I think the 1 year difference between Framber and Ranger Suarez is pretty small. And if you want to take Ranger Suarez over Framber Valdez for 2026, I wouldn't fight you on it. But if I needed the Braves to add an impact, high end, could take the ball in game one of a playoff series, I'm taking Framber Valdez all day long, and we'll see if the Braves have had discussions with Framber and maybe ultimately try to sign him. But it's a really interesting question, because I think you can make a strong case, even though kind of 1 through 9, the lineup is pretty set on paper. There are some very real questions about this group after you get past maybe the top 5 in the order.
Right. And without making this into an hour conversation, there's also some freedom. While I strongly believe the Braves need more pitching, they do have some pitching already, which makes it easier to take the bat in my mind. Like, if the Braves had zero pitching, if we were like, man, they're like 28th right now in projected rotation, then maybe you need the pitching because the floor is so low. I looked at the depth chart today on Fangraphs. I think the Braves are like 7th or 8th in starting pitching projection war right now. Your mileage may vary on that, but they're not 28th. Like, they're in okay shape with the pitching. They need more. But between that reality and, again, like, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but a good position player is just more valuable than a good pitcher in a vacuum. Like, that's just what it is. They're on the field more. They have more opportunities to impact things. And
over 162 games.
Correct.
I agree. I think though in October, give
in
me
the playoffs, you're
impact.
Right.
Give me the impact starter over the bat.
Yeah, that's actually, it's a good way to. I was thinking more big picture, but yeah, you're right. Like, one of the ways to argue against me would be if you really believe Framber Valdez is like a dominant playoff level guy, then yeah, that might swing it in your favor, especially if you project the Braves in the playoffs, which I think we probably do at this point. But I thought it was a good exercise, and it is more theoretical. Obviously, Kyle Tucker's not going to sign a 1-year deal with the Braves for $5 like we would hope that he would. But I think it's fascinating. And oddly, while I like the Yastrzemski move more than most people did, it would have been more interesting to see the reaction if the Braves had like spent big on a bat. And people would have, because people were bothered anyway that they went and got Yastrzemski in this role. And it's like, what if they had spent even more? Like, if they went and got Cody Bellinger instead of Mike Yastrzemski, what would the reaction have been? I would have liked it, but fans wouldn't have. Maybe I don't know. It would have been strange to me.
Offensively, other than Ha-Sung Kim, who I think we all agree will be a significant improvement over Nick Allen at shortstop, they are really putting some eggs in the basket that Mike Yastrzemski at age 35 is going to carry over what he has done against right-handed pitching for basically his entire career. And I think he will. If he was 38 years old, I might be mildly terrified. And I think there was nothing in Yastrzemski's profile to make me think that this is going to fall off a cliff tomorrow. But they are really banking on Yastrzemski continuing to hit right-handed pitching because he's never really hit lefties. It's a calculated gamble, but one I think we're going to be holding our breath on for a little while.
They are also putting a lot of eggs in the basket of some positive regression from internal guys. Austin Riley, chief among them, but then also Michael Harris and Ozzie Albies. And we'll get to a question actually about both Michael and Ozzie in just a moment after I work more partners. Okay, Scott, the aforementioned question is here from Steven, not our Steven, just a Steven in the world. Hello, Steven Tolbert, if you're listening, not you. The question is, do you have more confidence in Ozzie Albies or Michael Harris bouncing back next season? One of the ultimate questions, because I do think that Riley, just as a small sidebar, I think Riley is more important than either Harris or Ozzie, personally, because of the money, because of all those things. But putting Riley to the side, I will give you the first floor. And perhaps we'll go first take style here. Maybe I'll just take the other guy to see what you say. But thoughts?
So, who am I more confident in bouncing back, Ozzie Albies or Michael Harris? My first thought was Ozzie Albies, and then I remembered he broke the hamate bone in the same hand and wrist that he broke a year ago.
Scott, that is so funny. I have to say, that is exactly we didn't list. It's not on our document. We have lots of notes back and forth. We didn't say this. That's exactly what I thought. Like exactly. Now keep going, and we'll talk about it. But
yeah, it's almost like we've been doing podcasts for a decade at this point.
It is almost like that.
So I will take Michael Harris because I am legitimately concerned about yet another hand and wrist injury for Ozzie Albies, whose offensive game has been in decline. And in 3 of the last 4 years, Ozzie has been a flat out disappointment between performance and injuries. That being said, Michael Harris, man alive. I knew Michael Harris had struggled last season. He was impossibly bad when you look back on his first half. He hit 210 with a 234 on base, 317 slug, and a 47 WRC plus, which is worst in baseball. Michael Harris, Brad, this guy was rookie of the year 3 years ago, and he carried the worst WRC plus in the majors. Quick reminder, 100 is league average, and he was 47. That's impossibly bad. Then he went nuclear from July 20th to August 20th, turned into Barry Bonds, a 214 WRC plus, and OPS above 1100. Michael Harris was basically the best hitter in the game for a month. But then he was bad again right after that. And if Harris was able to keep it going, I think I'd be even more optimistic. But he had a 53 WRC plus the last 6 weeks of the year. He did have a pretty good last couple 10, 14 games of the season, which I know he was talking about frequently changing his stance in the box and where his hands were placed. And I think that's why I'm a little more optimistic between both the health of Michael Harris and his age and the fact that we have seen him do this at a high level. But to be blunt, until Michael Harris learns how to identify pitches better, learns what pitches to swing at and not swing at, he had the worst chase rate in the majors last year, and it was nearly worse the 3 years before that. I'm not super confident in either of these guys fully bouncing back, but because of the injury to Albies, I will take Michael Harris has a better chance of bouncing back.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that it's interesting because if the framing was just at the plate, I might take Ozzie because I think Ozzie's baseline at the plate is higher than Michael Harris's. Harris's higher upside probably at the plate, but Ozzie's downside is higher. It's provided he's somewhat healthy, which I think he probably will be. But you just laid it out. I mean, Harris's downside at the plate is really ugly. It really is. Like it is. I mean, not the first person to make this comparison, but it is after the league figured out Jeffrey and Core ugly. That's the comparison. I mean, I'm sorry to everybody involved. I went to school with Jeff. I know Jeff. That is the comparison. It is. And that's not a good comparison if you're Michael Harris. That's not where you want to be lumped in at the plate. I've heard arguments actually, maybe this is a different conversation for a different day, that I'm with you on the walks. Like he's never going to be a high walk guy. That's just not going to happen. He needs to take more, but it's almost like maybe he should be even more aggressive. Because if you're not going to walk, maybe you just turn like maybe you go Javi Baez, like, and you just hack and run into a few, like just hit more home runs because he has good power. I mean, Michael's got real power. Anyway, that's a different conversation. But the reason why I would lean Harris isn't the plate. It's the fact that he plays center field, can run, and plays defense. Like if Michael Harris is even an 80 WRC plus, which is bad, to be clear, he's still a like starting level player because he's that good at defense in center field. If Ozzie is 80 WRC plus, he's not a good player. That's what it comes down to. So like some of the projection systems really like Harris. Like Zips is very high on Harris. I think it's like 3.5 wins. Like it's a really aggressive projection. I would be under on that. I hope I'm wrong, but I still would probably lean in Michael's direction, in part because Ozzie is older. You know, it's worth remembering Michael Harris is currently 24 years old. He'll be 25 in March. He's very, very young, which is part of why projection systems are still going to like him because he should be on the upswing still. Ozzie is not on the upswing. Now, he's younger than you might think. Ozzie will be 29 in a couple days. And 29 is like right in the middle of your prime. But when you're 5'5", I'm not sure 29's in your prime. He might just have a little bit of an odd aging curve.
Oh,
So,
almost certainly. And
yeah,
there's other things too with Ozzie Albies that makes me concerned. And let's say, like, we love Ozzie Albies.
love Ozzy.
Like, if you just like personality wise, what he's, his reputation on and off the field, we are huge Ozzie Albies fans. But I'm pretty concerned. I really don't think Ozzie's going to bounce back. Now, if everybody else in the lineup is doing their job, I think it's going to be fine. But I have some legit concern. I mean, maybe you're not as concerned as I am, Brad. Are you? I mean, where are you at?
I'm not as concerned as some people are. I also think people should not think that Ozzy's going to be a star again. Like Ozzy was a star, like a 4-win, 5-win star level player. That guy's gone, I think. I think he can be what Zips projects, which is like a 2-win player. And that is not exciting. That's not going to be exciting to anybody, but that's a $20 million player and he makes $7 million. So like I would, okay, Scott, I'll ask you this. If you could sign up for whatever way he gets there, Ozzie Albies posts a 2 Fangraphs sports season in 2026. Yes or no? Do you take that right now?
Yes, because to be blunt, I think that's probably pretty close to Ozzie's ceiling after another hamate bone injury. I worry about the power. His defense has graded out terribly the last couple seasons. He's also lost a step. He was only 44th percentile in sprint speed, whereas a couple years ago he was routinely in the 70s and 80s. So I'm pretty concerned. I mean, if it's not clear, I am capital letters concerned about Ozzie Albies. I hope he's able to bounce back, but I mean, to answer your question, I would take a 2-WAR season all day long.
I would too. I think he has higher upside than that, but his upside is not what it was. Like, for instance, 2023, he hit 33 home runs and was a 125 WRC plus and a 4-win player. That guy's probably gone, I think. But can he be, I don't know, like a 110 WRC plus? League average maybe defensively? Like that's a good player. It's not a great player anymore, but we're talking about this probably too long. We both would take Harris. It's funny. I think if you ask me who's going to be the better offensive player, I would take Ozzie.
Interesting. I probably would have until he broke the hamate bone.
If Ozzie was healthy, I would take Ozzie for sure. Like I wouldn't even think about it. Offensively only. With the hamate bone, you're right. There's a level of uncertainty that we have to acknowledge, and with it, we have acknowledged. Like we don't know what it's going to look like, but having just had that, it clearly infected him. The numbers showed that. I think the comments on and off the record showed that as well. He does. If you're going to do that, doing it right before the offseason is probably a good time for it to happen. Like you have the whole offseason, but maybe he's not 100% ready, not ready to go. Like he'll play early in the year, but maybe he's not like himself till June. And if that happens, then yeah, you got to downgrade him a little bit for sure.
And for reference, in case folks, the hamate bone is a notorious bone that hitters break in their hand, and it's known to zap your power and impacts your grip strength. A lot of power hitters, just hitters in general, have broken this bone getting hit in the hand, and then it zaps their power for a certain amount of time. And everyone responds differently, and you're absolutely right. The fact that Ozzie broke that bone in September, he has 6 plus 7 months to get back to being healthy. That's encouraging because in the second half of last season, Ozzie carried a 111 WRC plus and an OPS of about 750. That's much more in line. Yes, all day long. Oh my God. Yeah, send it in. No questions asked. I worry about yet another injury to the same hand, to the same wrist, to a player who is smaller, is unconventional, has always been unconventional. That really does have me concerned. And I would love nothing more than for Ozzie in the first month of the year to hit 8 home runs and say, "In your eye, Scott Coleman," and come on the podcast and laugh at me for ever doubting him.
He's one of the guys that I think we'll pay closer attention to in spring training than most. Because for me, like spring training is not about it's about like, are you healthy? Do you look like do you have the juice? What are you saying on the record? Like, what's the buzz about his health? Like, obviously, Sean Murphy's another one of those where it's like, hey, are you able to play? But Ozzie's one to kind of quietly monitor. I think everyone's saying he's going to be good to play. But good to play and 100% back to where you were physically are not the same thing, which is notable. So anyway, a good question, good prompt. Confidence level is really interesting. This is a different question. They need one of these guys to bounce back. I don't know if you're going to get both. I would take one, to be honest with you. Maybe that's the pessimist in me, but they need one. If you get what you got from Ozzie and Michael last year, that's not good. That's going to be now. Granted, it won't be as bad because you already referenced this, but not having Nick Allen in the lineup makes everything a little bit easier. But you still don't want to have the 2025 level of Harris and the 2025 level of Ozzie in the same lineup every day. That's not what you want.
I think you can withstand one of them being bad. It's going to be really tough. If both of these guys struggle as badly as they struggled last year, we're going to be kind of hanging on for dear life because the top of this lineup can only do so much.
All right, Scott, let's pivot to another question from Mike, who says, does Luis Severino make sense for a Braves trade if they don't sign a free agent starter? Interesting question. I know we talked about it a couple times on the pod, but not in a ton of depth. And I think once the Braves made their pitching coach change, because Jeremy Hefner has experience with Severino, which you pointed out, I think already on the podcast and again to me in the document I'm reading right now. But just to set up a little bit what his contract looks like, and I'll throw it to you. He is going to make $25 million this year. That's a lot of money. I understand, but it's not crazy in the world of starting pitching prices. And then a player option for $22 million next year. I have to say this out loud. He plays for the A's. I have a feeling the A's might pay some of that contract if they were to be able to shed it from their books. So you're not like, this is not a situation where you're getting a guy and you're paying all the contract. Maybe they would have to, but the A's probably are not in love with that contract given where they operate financially. So all that said, the question is yours, Scott. Does he make sense for the Braves? Yes or no?
Luis Severino, the last 2 seasons, has a 4.2 ERA, a 4.16 FIP, and a 4.36 xFIP across about 55 starts with the Mets and the Athletics. And it's interesting because my take on Luis Severino is I'm not interested today, but get back to me in 3 or 4 weeks once Framber Valdez has signed, Ranger Suarez has signed, Chris Bassett, Zach Gallen, whoever else is no longer available. If the Braves strike out or don't want to go to whatever lengths it is to sign one of those free agents, I would be mildly interested in Severino. I think what I would want is to basically, one, give up no prospects of note. I mean, if they want to throw in a 16-year-old who hasn't even made it to the States, And then also either the A's cover money or the Braves would send Aaron Bummer and his $10 million to Sacramento to balance it out, because then you're getting Luis Severino for like $15 million. That's not bad. I mean, that is not a lot of money for starting pitchers in the year 2026. So I'm not in love with Severino, but he is an interesting name because, and you alluded to this a moment ago, Oakland/Sacramento would give this guy away. I mean, they would personally drive him to the airport to say, see you later. Severino also probably wants out. He openly criticized the ballpark that the A's were playing in. And I mean, it was Little League and I mean, it's a legitimate minor league stadium.
They're still playing there, by the way.
Yes, they are. He hated it. So an interesting name. I wouldn't say it's 0%. I think it's a low chance that the Braves would get Severino. But if all the free agents sign for crazy contracts or get, opt-outs after every year like Imai just got, then maybe you have that conversation. And I mean, I would take him over Bryce Elder. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. Not a priority acquisition. You would certainly prefer Valdez or Suarez, full stop. Gallen, it still depends on what the money is with Gallen. I'm not in love with Gallen, but he is I like the upside a lot better with Gallen than Severino. I went through the numbers a little bit on this. Number one, his stuff plus, which is a good metric of like just how good your stuff is. It was good last year. I took kind of actually a half step forward. Odd situation, like he signed there. It was like when he signed with the A's, people were like, what's going on here? And the A's kind of like needed to spend some money for revenue sharing purposes and all these. Anyway, they decided to give him money, and it was kind of an odd situation. The way you put it is perfect because while I have been higher on the Chris Bassett types than you this winter. I think Luis Severino is like very comparable to Chris Bassett. And I don't mean that in like an awesome, like pump your fist way. But for example, they have almost the exact same Fangraphs WAR and innings totals over the last 2 seasons. They're both like 2.5 win per season pitchers the last 2 years. Not sexy, but good. Eat innings, pretty durable guys. Severino's 4 years younger than Bassett. And that's the kind of deal Bassett's going to get. Like what Severino's owed is basically 2 years and $47 million if you factor in the player option. That's like what Bassett's probably going to get. And if it's the situation that you laid out, like I'm not saying you trade, Ken Caminiti for Luis Severino. That would be insane. You don't do that. You don't trade any. I'm with you. No top 10 prospects for Luis Severino. But if the price is bargain basement and your other options are gone, like I could definitely see Alex saying, I'd rather trade essentially nothing for Luis Severino than give Zach Gallen $100 million.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's defensible to me. Now, I'd rather pay $100 million for Ranger Suarez or Framber Valdez than trade for Luis Severino, personally. But as a fallback in a month, in 6 weeks, it's not crazy. Like, you could certainly convince me that would be a relatively responsible addition, especially if the price is as low as I think that it might be. Also, one of my pet projects, Tyler Mahle, signed this week. One of the few guys who signed recently. RIP to one of my dreams was that Tyler Mahle would sign for like $8 million with the Braves. I'm kind of kidding about the dream, but a guy I would have liked the Braves to sign. No, I think Severino's interesting in a sicko way. Like no one would be excited, not even us. Like we come on and be like, all right, here's the deal, everybody. Pretty useful pitcher, not sexy. So if we're saying that, the reaction would probably be like, this guy stinks, get him out of here. It's fine. That's the normal reaction. But the Hefner piece does make it my brain go a little bit up. But also, it might be that Hefner's like, "Hey, Alex, no, we don't know. We don't know if he loves him or not. Like, and it's we'll never know if he doesn't like him. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So that's
familiarity. Familiarity with the player is not always positive. I mean,
correct.
Yes, there is that easy line connection between Severino, who, just for reference, Severino's career was basically on life support. He signed with the Mets. Jeremy Hefner was the pitching coach with the Mets. And Severino had his best year in a couple seasons and ultimately got a 2-year +1 contract with Sacramento. And everyone was like, wow, okay, good for Severino. He's back. Well, of course, one time a major pitcher with the New York Yankees. So that's why there's been a little bit of connecting the dots. It would feel very Alex Anthopoulos, especially if he was able to unload Aaron Bummer, or if Sacramento threw in $8 to $12 million to cover some of that money. That's why he makes sense. And you're right. I mean, if get back to me on January 20th and we'll make a decision on whether or not it makes sense to pursue Severino.
That's not that far away. That's like 2 weeks from now, Scott. There's a chance that Suarez and Valdez are still available on January.
That's true. Okay. Get back to me on January 27th. That's my mom's birthday. Happy early birthday, Mom. January 27th. We'll have maybe the Luis Severino discussion if nothing else has happened.
Yeah. Shouts to Scott's mom. No, and look, there's always a guy or two like Severino. I think everyone understands is probably available in trade. We talked about Joe Ryan earlier this winter, Pablo Lopez, like that kind of guys. There's probably somebody available we don't know is available that Alex might be able to pounce on. And it's one of those things that like we just he's a very natural fallback option who, again, I think is comparable, not better than Chris Bassett, but like somewhat in that like next tier down if the price is right. And again, the price is low. If the price is high, we're out. I can probably speak for you on that. The price is high, we're out.
Yeah. Oh, so, absolutely. Please don't hear this. Please don't hear this segment and go, oh, the guys on Hammer territory are banging the door for Luis Severino.
We are not.
But if Framber Valdez gets $200 million and Ranger Suarez gets a 6-year deal and we don't believe in Zach Gallen enough and Chris Bassett beats Merrill Kelly, who got 2 years and $40 million, then I would, if it's all things equal, I don't necessarily want Luis Severino, but if the Braves strike out everywhere else, yes. And I am fascinated to know of the, we'll call it rumored to be available starting pitchers on the trade market, who's actually available. Like there was some smoke earlier today with Edward Cabrera from the Marlins might be available. And sounds like a couple teams were interested there. Earlier in the offseason, there was talk about Pablo Lopez and Joe Ryan, but there's been nothing on that front ever since. Maybe the Twins aren't going to sell. There's there's some bad teams in baseball who probably make sense for trade partners with the Braves. I think at this point, we're just waiting for the free agency dominoes to fall. And then there will be a little bit of a scattering of trade stuff in the back end of January before everybody has to get ready to go come early February.
Yeah. And unfortunately, to bring things full circle, the market it's kind of a waiting game. And I think that just as a lot of people, whether you're a school teacher or or you do sales or whatever, you're going back to work like tomorrow, or maybe today as you listen to this podcast. The 5th is like the day that everyone goes back to work. That's probably the case in Major League Baseball to some degree as well. Obviously, it's a different job, but kind of there's some normalcy to it. The holidays are over, and I think this week we'll probably see a little bit more fireworks than we saw last week, non-Japanese player division when it comes to posting. So, with that said, it's a new year, Scott. It's 2026. Our first show is in the books for the most part. You mentioned it earlier, but last year was not a lot of fun. Like, I like talking to you. I like talking to Sean. I like talking to Steven, all of our guests. I enjoy doing the podcast. The Braves had a nightmare calendar year last year. I don't want to tempt fate by saying it can't get worse, because it can always get worse, but I don't think it will. I think it will be better in 2026. How much better remains to be seen, but we're catching the fire again about baseball. We're getting closer. Spring training is in the offing. Scott and I are fans of the number 1 and number 2 teams in college basketball. You might be able to see our moods improve as the spring goes along, depending on if that goes well. We're almost there. It's a new year, Scott. We did not do the construction of New Year's resolutions that every podcast does. Maybe we should have. Maybe we'll do that in 2 weeks when nothing else is going on. But a pleasure to talk to you once again as this New Year's upon us.
Yes. Happy New Year's to you, my good friend, and everybody out there. And I just want to take a quick moment to give a sincere thank you to everybody who has checked out the show, whether you've been listening to us since the Talking Chop days or you joined on 3 weeks ago. And I'm sure every day I hear, hey, we just found you guys. I didn't know you changed hosting sites, or wow, we just found the show. We love it. Thanks for all you do. We really do appreciate you guys checking out the show. It means the world to us. You would never know this team had such a bad 2025, the way that everybody tunes in. That gives us a reason. We really do strive to give you guys the best Braves content on the internet, and we'll continue to keep rolling in 26. And God willing, let's have a better season. Maybe have another signing or 2 in the next couple of weeks. And then let's get back to the playoffs. Let's do those playoff series. Let's do those playoff game reaction shows that, we're sweating and then we fire up the microphones and do a fun show. Let's get back to more of that for the Braves in 2026.
I agree, my friend. Please subscribe, everybody. If you just found us now, hey, welcome aboard. Please go ahead and subscribe. If you are an audio listener, Apple, Spotify, etc., easy to subscribe there. If you want to take 2 seconds and also subscribe on YouTube, be very helpful to go ahead and do that. That's literally a one-click endeavor, and the same in reverse. If you're a video watcher on YouTube, thank you for being here as always. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform as well, audio-wise. Apple, Spotify, auto-download the show. All the clicks help us, not to try to game system, but it's true that it all helps us patronize our advertisers, all that stuff. Ratings, reviews. Follow Scott if you want to on social media. He's an excellent follow on the Braves. He's at Scott Coleman 55. I'm kind of a bad Braves follow, so if you want to follow me, that's okay. At BT Rowland. But Steven, Sean, and Scott are way better follows than I am about baseball only, because it's basketball season. I'm doing a lot of basketball right now. It's just what it is. It's work for me. One more time. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll have much more coming up this week, a more normal schedule moving forward. The holidays are over. We're back in full. So stay tuned, subscribe, and we'll see everybody next time.